All right, guys, we are back. This is the Shillan and Duffy show. I am Keith Shillan. I know the first thing you're thinking of is, wait, this show usually comes out Sunday night, maybe Monday morning, depending on where you are. But it is actually Thursday night, and the reason why it is midweek is because the UFC had a very rare midweek card. Because of that, my usual guest, my usual co-host, was unable to make it. I'll get to his replacement in a second. I just want to tell you about the partnership between the Sherdog Radio Network and Loudmouth MMA. You can hear the show on both wonderful networks. I am, of course, Keith Shillan. I'm a writer for Sherdog, Cage Side Press, and the executive producer of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. The senior editor of Sherdog, Ben Duffy, is usually here. He could not make it due to responsibilities of being a senior editor of Sherdog throughout the week. So what I did was I went with a guy who's not busy at all in MMA. I think he's known for being very lazy, never getting any stories, not doing any work. And he writes for a really small, is it a blog, I think? Is it a blog post or something like that?
I don't think we're quite there yet.
He is Nolan King. He's a reporter for MMAJunkie. Everything I said, if you're unfamiliar with Nolan, he's actually one of the best in the business. Nolan, how you doing, my man?
Doing well, man. You're making me feel guilty. I had an off day today. You know, now I feel like I'm slacking. I'm itching. They're gonna get a bunch of stories out of me tomorrow. I'm gonna be cranking them out. Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
So in this month of MMA, when people talk about the big replacement, is it going to be Jorge Masvidal stepping in for Gilbert Burns, or is it going to be Nolan King stepping in for Ben Duffy?
Yeah, man. It's I'm giving Jorge a run for his money. I think we've probably eaten the same amount of pizza recently in the last 24 hours, and played the same amount of video games in our training camp for this one.
So Jorge brought in 1.3 million pay-per-view buys. Are you guaranteeing the views on this will be the same?
Oh, I can beat that.
All right, there you go.
That's child's play.
There you go. Be careful. Don't talk any junk about Jorge, though. Leon Edwards would tell you not to do that. So, guys, we are recapping UFC Fight Island 1, which is, to me, a really confusing title, considering this is not their first event at Fight Island, but technically that was UFC 251. Anyways, I'm actually going to call it UFC Fight Night Kattar versus Ige. It went down this past Wednesday at Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. I'll get to the bonuses. We get that stuff out of the way. The bonuses, the fight of the night was Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus UFC newcomer Manir Lazest. I'd say his name and butcher it right away. Al Hassan missed weight, so he was ineligible to get a bonus. And because of that, they gave out 3 performance bonuses. Those bonuses went to Lerone Murphy and 2 other UFC newcomers. The first one goes by the name. I'm flipping pages if you can hear it because I actually phonetically wrote down their names. I used to make fun of Kyle Steele for butchering these names, and now that I'm in the more of the host role than the co-host, I have to do them. Kamazat Shemaev and
I had to practice his name. I interviewed him a couple times, and I didn't on camera. Man, you don't want to screw it up with the guy looking at you. So
yeah, and the other one
was Bukauskas.
Yeah, Modeskis Bukakis. I wrote it. It was so bad. I wrote it phonetically and still couldn't figure out how to say it. I wrote Mo Des Kiss Bo Cow Skis. I didn't know how to write skis.
Hopefully, you never find yourself in Lithuania, man. You'll be screwed.
Yeah, I wonder if that's like a common name in Lithuania. Is that like John Smith in Lithuania?
That's a good question.
Let's get to the action. Well, let me ask you this: How do you feel about the midweek card? Did you enjoy it? No, I'm not. Hold on. Not particularly. Not asking you. Did you enjoy this event? I mean, just in general, did you like an event being on a Wednesday?
I would have liked it to be on a little bit earlier. I think it made it tough. Coming off of the longest card in UFC history to then 3 days later have, no discredit to the fighters on the card, but coming down off the high of 251 and the names to kind of take a step down in terms of general name recognition, and then also to kind of have a 10 o'clock main card start there. with not the best pacing and 5 straight decisions was kind of a brutal twist for my Wednesday night. Doing all the play-by-play for MMAJunkie. I think this week, they're definitely USA Today is definitely getting their money worth out of me. But overall, I mean, hey man, fights are fights. I enjoy them, but it is kind of a little overwhelming when they do run late and you're tired and this decision after decision after decision.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. The decisions that definitely not help. I think when it comes to the MMA world, I don't know if anybody sounds the horn or gets on their soapbox more about the not catering to the West Coast and hurting the East Coast and the people in London and people in all over the world. I'm not even gonna say it. Like, anybody who's listening to the show already knows by now how I feel about this. It makes no sense. I said I was gonna say it, but now I'm going on it again. There's a reason why the Red Sox on the East Coast play at 7 o'clock, not at 10 o'clock. There's a reason why. There's a reason why NFL, the Sunday night football game, starts at 8 o'clock, not 10 o'clock. It makes no sense to me. I don't know why it didn't start earlier. I say it every week. They are limiting their fan base. Europeans, get loud. Don't fight with the people on the East Coast who say this. We were calling for an early time. Now, if you're in Europe and these other part of the world, it's always going to suck for you. But it would suck a little less if they started early. Like, we're actually on the same team. Stop fighting with us when us and the East Coast complain. But the one reason why I don't want to play, I love having events. So the more events, the merrier. The people who say oversaturation, I'm like, whatever, then don't watch. I would rather watch MMA on a Wednesday night than watch reruns of Frasier or whatever the hell. I don't even know what's on. That's how I feel. So give me more. And I still feel like a little nostalgia because when the fight nights first came out, if we go way back, no, I don't remember if they were called fight nights or whatever they were, but
before I was born.
Yeah, before you were born, when it was like just me and Joe Rogan watching. The non-pay-per-views and non-numbered ones, they were on Wednesdays. Like, I remember Diego Sanchez versus Caro Parisian in the main event on a Wednesday, like Diego Sanchez and Nick Diaz and all these guys. So I still kind of like that. I still like the PFL does it on, when they do it on a Thursday. It's smart to not have to compete. It's why I've always thought Bellator does best when they're on Friday, to not have to do a head-to-head compete with the UFC. Like, why compete with a major player? So that's why I like it. Anyways, let's talk about this card. I don't expect the show to go as long as we normally do because there's, like you said, in a ranking sense, there's only 1 or 2 matchups that really have significance. But the one that does is the main event. A guy that both me and you are very familiar from because, as you can tell by our accents, we are both from New England. And the guy from New England, Calvin Kattar, from Methuen, Massachusetts, got a unanimous decision win over Dan Ige. I scored the contest 49-46 for Kattar. I saw a couple 48-47s for Kattar. I seen a couple 50s. I didn't see anybody score for Ige. It seemed pretty consensus. Even Ige in his post-fight interview seemed like he knew that he lost. That said, I almost feel like Dan Ige's stock rose a little to me, and Kattar's kind of felt like in a loss. I'm higher on Ige where he is now than before the fight, and I'm a little less on Kattar because Kattar is so technically sound. Like, he on the feet, his boxing is as good as anybody's. The way he works the body, his jab, the little step back uppercut, his counter uppercut, like, they're really, really good. When he's throwing combinations, he's so accurate. He's got great vision. But the thing, and this is going to sound like a really, really weird comparison, but it'll make more sense if you listen to last week's episode when I was talking to Ben Duffy. He reminds me a lot of Petr Yan, and what I mean by that is, I still have questions about Petr Yan. Well, I say, well, he's so technically, but he kind of like gives rounds away. Like, I felt Kattar like kind of gave the second round away. He kind of cruised a little bit. His fights against Zabit, the reason why he lost, I thought it was like a lack of urgency. I felt like I felt it now. Like, I felt there was times if Kattar turned it up, he would have been able to possibly put Dan Ige out. After the first round, Dan Ige's, I believe it was his right eye was completely swollen over. Right after the first round. You're a great boxer, and his eye is closed. Like, to me, there's no way he should last another 20 minutes. Tell me why I'm wrong, Nolan.
I think your assessment's right because I kind of felt the same way. You were expecting me to tell you that you were wrong. I think this is a first now that I might
Nah,
agree
this
with you.
this is kind of
I think,
this is no, this is that kind of the thing I do. Anytime I take a big stand, I always say, "Tell me how I'm wrong."
but yeah, I think in terms of Ige's stock going up, I definitely agree with you. The way that I kind of saw it playing out in my head was that Calvin would take over like he did in the fight and he'd be winning. And I thought he'd get a late finish. I think I kept thinking that in my head, a few rounds that he would edge out. And as the fight went on, it would get progressively and progressively more in his favor. But Ige had his moments. I mean, in the second round, he busted Calvin's nose pretty good, and it seemed to throw him off his game for at least the remainder of that round. Like you said, kind of lethargic. He didn't have much offense going forward. A lot of what he was doing, even counterpunching, was a little thrown off. He seemed a little rattled by the whole scenario. But once he kind of got his I don't want to say feet under him, but once he started feeling more comfortable again and kind of I think maybe stopped thinking about how his nose was all screwed up. In the third, fourth, and fifth, it was Kattar. He took over, and I agree with you. It's not the most aggressive performance we've seen from him. He didn't put on one of these flashy finishes like we saw with Jeremy Stevens or the Shane Burgos one. But there is a part of me that thinks that there were questions that were answered here too. The fact that he went 5 rounds for the first time against a tough guy. The fact that he can kind of have that counter punching, technically sound game where. Ige wasn't able to really get anything going because Calvin would beat him to the punch every time. So I think there was some stuff that I learned about Calvin that night. Was it his maybe best performance? Probably not. But I think he definitely solidified himself in the top, 5 of that division. I think there's 5 legitimate contenders, or excuse me, 6 legitimate contenders and the champion. So I think you can include his name up in the ranks of the zombies and the Ortegas and the Holloways and the Zabits and the Yairs of the world. I think he's in that class now.
Yeah, I want people to understand what I'm saying. I am very high on Calvin Kattar, and that's why I'm a little disappointed. Like I expected an early knockout. I picked on the record. I picked a second round knockout. I thought that I would be talking about it with excitement, like, oh my God, wait till Calvin Kattar versus fill in the blank top featherweight, like how exciting this is going to be. And any way that Calvin Kattar makes such a statement that he could have did what Gilbert Burns did, where there was a whole bunch of guys in line, and then suddenly the guy who's been active and makes a statement, like Gilbert Burns did, like all of a sudden, because that's how I feel about featherweight. Like right now, last week we were talking about next for Alex Volkanovski, and we threw like 3 or 4 names out, like nobody's like taking that, like nobody's in line, no one's front, no one's taking it. Like, could Kattar come out of nowhere, stash Ige? Most people are like, not the highest win, but the way he did it, main event, maybe he could. I thought it was a long shot, but the fact, like, to me now, like, it's like nobody's calling for that. If you told me beforehand that it was going to be a 25-minute fight with Dan Ige standing, being forced to stand with Calvin Kattar for a large majority. When there was takedowns, it was actually Kattar, getting the takedown or at least landing on top in the scrambles. If you told me that ahead of time, I would expect this fight to be a blowout. If you said, 25 minutes, I would have been like, I would expect like a 10-8 round in there. I would expect it on one side. It wasn't. I mean, even heading into the championship rounds that they said, there was some people had Ige up 2-1 after the third. Felder and Bisping was talking about like, hey, this is anybody's fight. Even in the 5th round, going to the 5th, they're like, hey, it could be 3-1, it could be 2-2. So that's why I'm a little disappointed in that performance. As far as Ige, why, Ige is a guy that, he needs to scramble, he needs to get takedowns, he needs to force the pace, and he didn't do any of that, and still was competitive, still won round striking, which is. I've never saw Dan Ige as a top contender. I never saw him like, I guess he's a top 15 guy. Like now I'm like, well, he's like solidified that. I mean, look what he did with Calvin Kattar. Like it was a competitive fight. So, is this the sailing for Dan Ige? I kind of feel like that. But what? How do you feel about Ige after this? I think you're on mute. Nolan, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. If you look at the level of competition that he has as he has climbed the ranks, I mean, most of his fights have been close. There's the Mike Santiago blowout, but everything else after that, I think, was at least relatively competitive. And he was moving up in step each time. It was pretty clear cut. The guy that he fought last, or the guy that he fought is fighting next, is better than the one he fought last. Like clear matchmaking up the rankings for him. And, to be able to have those close wins each time shows me that there is a lot of improvement that's going on. And sure, the Barbosa fight, you could argue that was Barbosa's win, or he should have won that or whatever. But, I think Dan is still improving. We'll see. Again, I think the 5-round experience, Calvin's by far, I think, the toughest guy that he's fought. No discredit to Edson, but I think Calvin's the guy right now in terms of top 6 in featherweight. So I don't know. We'll see. This next fight, I think, will be really telling. It'll depend on who they give him and see what he can bring now that he's had that under his belt.
Yeah, I understand. Let me ask you this question before we move on to the rest of the card, and I expect us to go through the rest of the card much quicker than the main event. Did the guy that the UFC want to win? And what I mean by that, I don't necessarily say, I'm not trying to say Dana White's rooting or whatever. What I mean is the guy who's best for the business. Do you believe the guy who's best for the business UFC won?
I do. Yeah, for sure. I think,
I agree.
Obviously the New England cartel thing.
Sure.
I think Calvin says all the right stuff. He's got very prepared answers. Like most of the guys we talk to, I think part of the reason it's fun, reporting is that they don't have these prepared statements like the NBA or the NFL players do. But Calvin Kattar does an excellent job of giving you quotes without necessarily saying something too opinionated. But I think he was able to on Saturday after the fights kind of twist that a little bit. He was able to still have a call out of the champion without really calling him out, and kind of show his attitude and kind of, it's something that I don't think people would ever disagree with. Like, hey, I think I'm the best in the world, and the champion, wants a contender, so that's me. Versus like if he went out and trashed Volkanovski or stuff like that. So I think he's really smart. I think that people like his personality. They like his fighting style. And I think he was definitely the A side that the UFC wanted to have win in this one.
Yeah, I agree. As far as his answers, I think what you're saying is Bill Belichick would approve of Calvin Kattar.
Big time. It's like these guys in the other pro sports leagues. My understanding, they take like classes, right? And they kind of show them the rookies how to act and how to answer questions. And maybe Calvin snuck into some of Bill Belichick's or the Patriots rookie camps or something and gotten some info, because he's really polished with those answers, and now he's starting to show his personality along with it. It's a good match. Yeah,
well, I know some of his coaches, like Greg Wrubell, is a huge Patriots fan. Maybe he's putting him through classes. I'm not sure about Tyson. I think Tyson Chartier, I think he might be a big Patriots fan. I know he's a local sports, so I'm assuming he was a Patriots fan. I also think it's been a long time since New England has had anybody ranked this high. I mean, you think about the only time New England's ever had a champion in the UFC was Tim Sylvia, and even his root. I mean, he's from New England. He still had the Maniac nickname, but he was training out in Bettendorf, Iowa, with the Militich team. Kenny Florian at one point rose high up the rankings, but he kind of bounced around training in different places. So to have a guy who's came up through this region that both of us are very familiar with, to come up through this region to train here. I mean, they train in New Hampshire. They train down in Lausanne's team in Massachusetts. Sometimes they bounce into Pawtucket, Triforce there. I think they need that. Like Hawaii has their stars. You have your Max Holloway. Like New England doesn't have a star right now, and perhaps Calvin Kattar could be that one. Before we move on, but I still think go back up a little bit. You mentioned some of his recent wins. You mentioned, guys that he did hurt. He still lost recent wins. He lost round to Burgos. He lost round to Stevens. He lost round to Ige. Obviously, he lost rounds to Zabit. He lost rounds to Moicano. Like that's still is a concern for me. Let's matchmake. Let's start with Ige. And I'm not going to matchmake as much as we normally do, especially because Nolan came in the last moment. Who would you like to see Ige match with next?
That's a good question. I'm pulling up the official UFC rankings here.
All right, I'll let you do that. I'll give you mine while you do that.
Okay.
All right,
you go for it.
Look that up. You can. I would let you filibuster a little bit, but so I was thinking, like I said about Ige, I feel good about him, but I also feel like he reached a ceiling where he's always exciting. I know someone that you've been big on just from the pure entertainment sense. I'm big on that sense. Like he's entertaining. He's always, and this is actually for Ige, it was probably one of the least entertaining ones because he was because of Calvin Kattar's jab, he wasn't able to press that almost reckless abandon like he did against Edson Barboza. So I feel like being that this is a ceiling, it's time for him to kind of be the test for someone. So I say, how about Arnold Allen? Like Arnold Allen's a guy is tough in the division. Obviously, when we talk about matchmaking, we are ignoring COVID, we're ignoring travel restrictions. We don't know what kind of world we're in. So I understand European fighters, blah blah blah. We're ignoring that. We're not going that deep with this. All right, but. I think Arnold Allen is the guy who's on the rise, young going. I'd like to see Ige be the test for Arnold. So I feel like I filibustered a little bit. Nolan, you got anybody?
Well, I was going to pick Arnold Allen, but so now I'm filibustering again. No. Looking at the rankings, I think that Allen is a good matchup. I think it makes sense for both guys. It could be a rebound fight for Ige, or it could be Allen finally bursting into, getting a top 10 win. I like that one. Other ones, if they wanted to, depending, again, this doesn't necessarily make as much sense momentum wise, but, if they wanted to give him a guy, like a Shane Burgos or Jeremy Stevens, somebody like that coming off a loss, I think either one of those guys would be acceptable. I know sometimes the UFC doesn't like to pile up the losses on their, top 12 guys, but I think any of those three choices would be the way that I'd lean.
Yeah, I really like the two guys you mentioned just because of the styles. Both guys like to march forward, and so does Ige. And it would really come down to who is forced to fight off their back foot. Burgos, he just keeps his hands out and walks through. Jeremy Stevens, if you're going to walk through with that guy, you're going to get tagged. And then obviously Ige's, generally speaking, other than this fight, he wants to press forward. I think stylistic, that'd be really fun matchups. Let's turn to Calvin Kattar. I'll go first again. I said it last week. When we talked about Max Holloway, what could be next Max Holloway? I said, how about Kattar if he wins? I was expecting, like I said, what I said at the time. I said, imagine if Kattar gets like a first-round knockout, second-round knockout, something spectacular. I think that, not as so, but I still think the length, the reach of these guys, the technical boxing, I still think that'd be a fun episode. And when it comes to Calvin Kattar in the featherweight division, when we were talking last week, I've been saying this for a long time in the featherweight division. It's so good, especially on top. It's like insert whoever, and I'm excited. So I'll go with Max Holloway. I'm sure I'll be excited with whoever you go. You can still pick the same person, by the way.
Yeah, I think Holloway's the no-brainer for me, and I think part of the reason is because of crossing off all the other contenders here. Ortega Zombie, unless something's going on, clearly something's going on there that fight's not getting booked. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of talk, a lot of sign the contract or this date or the other. So I guess if they have to blow up that fight, then they could go that road. I don't think the UFC wants to. I think that fight sells itself in numerous categories of entertainment. Zabit in Yair, who knows what's going to happen with them? It was rumored that it was going to be at the end of August. If either one of those guys can't go, it's a quick turnaround for Kattar. I'm not sure he wants to do that, but I'm sure if they, offered it to him, it would be something that he would consider the opportunity, especially against Yair. That's kind of more who I'm leaning towards here. But I think Holloway's the best pick. I think you hit it on the nose. It's just those other two matchups, I think they want to stay intact, and I think it would make a lot of sense for both guys. All
right. So we both got similar matchups, and I think both fights would be fun. Moving on to the co-main event. First thing I want to say about this fight, Tim Elliott got a unanimous decision over Ryan Benoit. What a weird order. Tim Elliott, first of all, flyweights never get any recognition. To be in the co-main event was really surprising to me. The other thing that was surprising me is, the other thing is the fact that this isn't a big flyweight matchup. Like, this wasn't like a number one contender matchup. These are kind of guys both with their backs against the wall, possibly getting cut. We were talking about Tim Elliott just a couple weeks ago when he lost to Brandon Royval as a possible making our cut list, and being that he's a flyweight, we're going to let him stick around just because flyweight's so shallow. Instead, he's in a co-main event. He actually gets a win. So let me ask you this. The big question about this fight is, who did you score the fight for, and what was your score? Like, what was your overall scorecard?
I scored it for Benoit. I had him 29-28. It's kind of, funny when I do the junkie play-by-play, it's really tough, right? Because I'm not skewed by the court of public opinion at all. I don't know, I'm typing, I have to look up and down. And, if I miss something and everybody else is watching, it's like, that's a clear round for so-and-so. Like, I don't let myself get skewed by that. I kind of stick to my gun and then check if I'm right afterwards, which has led to some critical scorecards from the Twitter hurling insults at me. But for that one, I scored it Benoit. I thought it was pretty, I felt pretty confident in that pick. I thought he landed the bigger shots, the power shots. I felt like Elliott was more active, but it was a lot of pitter patter, like weird little side kicks and push kicks to the stomach and kind of flashy stuff and movement. Whereas I thought Benoit had more substance, overall there. And I know you don't score a fight overall, but I did give it 2-1 to him. Close fight regardless, but I felt pretty confident, man, in my decision with that one.
Yeah, I actually agree. I scored a 29 for Benoit. I could even see a 30-27.
Yep.
What I feel like. So let me say this. So last week, what I said about, last fight, what I said about Calvin Kattar is I didn't think he looked as good in the loss. I feel the same way about Tim Elliott. I think he looked worse in this loss than he did against in this win than he did against the loss against Brandon Royval. I mean, he kind of ran out of gas in that one, but he was just kind of touching, even the scrambles. He was not winning them. To me, it was not a good showing. As far as Ryan Benoit, I thought he won, but I also think he should have won the fight, but he had a terrible stretch. He fought the fight to allow Tim Elliott to get the win. And what I mean by that is he's single striking, and I understand he was landing when he threw, he was landing with power, but you're a flyweight trying to knock people out. It's a division where you hardly ever see knockouts, and Tim Elliott is a volume guy. You probably won't be able to match his volume, but you gotta throw more than even if he's just touching back, just jabbing a little bit back, even if he's just using it as a range finder, you gotta throw. You can't circle the perimeter of the cage and just lose the volume and not initiate any of the takedowns, not initiate any of the striking. So yeah, that's why I think I still think he should have won, but his strategy, to me, allowed the judges to score against him. Anything else about this fight you want to talk about?
No, not particularly. I think you hit it on the head. I thought Benoit, it almost made me, wonder if he was concerned about his cardio or something. He seemed to, almost be, he was tired. He didn't look exhausted, but he seemed to be holding back a little. So I think you hit it on the head with that one. And, I would assume both guys are going to be safe. I actually think Benoit's stock in my head kind of went up a little bit. I wasn't particularly high on him coming into this one. I thought Elliott would have had a little bit more of a dominant showing than that. So I'm guessing they're both safe, especially with flyweight here to stay. And I guess there's not much really else to say about that one.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if Benoit got cut, considering it seemed like the majority of fans and media and stuff did give him the win. Let's move on to the a third fight on the main card. We had Jimmy Rivera versus Cody Stamann. This was, besides the main event, this was the fight that I think majority of people was most excited about, especially from a ranking sense, made the most sense. But this is the fight that really disappointed me the most. I expected a little more action, and it was a very low output. A lot of wrestling, but it wasn't fun wrestling. It wasn't fun scrambles. There was a lot against the cage. I think generally speaking, I'm going to give them a pass because, there was reports out that they were supposed to fight in August. It got moved up a month. They both kind of took it really short notice. That's why they went up to 145. So I'm going to give him a pass in that sense. But I didn't really like Stamann's strategy. I don't know if Stamann realized that he wasn't winning the wrestling exchanges. Or at least, I don't want to say he was losing the wrestling exchange. He just wasn't winning them. They might have been stalemating out. Because he kept going with this heavy wrestling strategy. And when they were on the feet, while there wasn't much exchanges, they were clearly for Rivera. And then, as it seemed like I feel like a broken record now, 3 fights in a row, I'm going to say it, a fighter showed a lack of urgency. I felt like you're probably down 2 rounds, and he was looking for single leg takedowns, looking to press against the cage. Wasn't I'm very disappointed in Stamann. Move over to Rivera. He
surprised me a lot.
Yeah. So Rivera's had moments where he looks fantastic. Everyone always bring up his best performance in the UFC was, or at least, especially now, like hindsight 2020, it looks even better now. Is his loss to Petr Yan, where he had the best performance against Petr Yan. He was, a lot of people believe he was winning the first 2 rounds until he got dropped in both rounds. Do you view Jimmy Rivera as a true contender in the division?
I think I'm going to need to see another win out of him before I make that claim. Definitely, I'll hand up on this one. I wasn't giving him the credit that he deserved coming into this fight. And again, I think part of it too is, having those losses to Marlon Moraes, Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan, those guys, the time he fought them, they were top 10, top whatever guys, but they weren't championship contenders and they weren't champions, and now they are. So I think it's a little bit of, history wasn't necessarily honest with us. We weren't at the time. We didn't realize, that Rivera could make the claim that he's, one of the top 4 guys in the world right now. He's just lost to the other 3 that are better.
That's right.
So it's really tough to say. And I think he did impress me. Stamon's a guy that still has not had a whole lot of ranked wins in his career. So it's kind of hard to tell where he's even at. And then this was being at 145. They got there later than the rest of the card. So there's a different weight class on short notice. A lot of question marks with this one. I think Rivera overall fared pretty good. But I'll need to see another win out of him before I start, throwing him up there to say, hey, this guy's going to have those top contender fights. He's going to make a push for the belts at 135 pounds. Just need to see him fight again. Yeah,
it's so funny because, me and you, we agree a lot. We always pretend that we disagree a lot, but we really agree more than anything. But we're not scared to go after each other when we disagree. But the 2 things I wrote down before you finish your comment, I wrote wait, like wait and see, and then I wrote 4th best with a question mark next to it. I was going to ask you, is it possible that, he lost to Jan, Sterling, and Moraes, the 3 best guys in the division, and he just happens to be the 4th best. I'm actually going to take the same wait and see approach. He's had moments, he's had flashes, but there's a lot of guys who've had flashes. Of greatness. It's the ability to sustain the greatness for the majority of 15 minutes or 25 minutes, which I don't know if we've seen that in Sterling. I feel like this, he is in that group below the elite. There's the elite group that could win a title, hold a title. I feel like he's just below that group. But I felt that way about other guys who have won the title. So, one guy that jumps in my mind was Robert Whittaker. I didn't really see Robert Whittaker as a champion one day. Maybe Jimmy Rivera will make that move. Let's do this. Let's matchmake Rivera. Let's see the last matchmaking I want to do. I want to put him with a guy who I also feel like so like I was saying, there's the elite. I feel like there's a group, and then there's the rest of the division. Mm-hmm. He's in that group in between. I want to put him with someone else I put in that group, and that's Calvin Kattar's good buddy Rob Font. That's who I think would be a fun matchup. Who would you like to see?
Yeah, for Rivera, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, for Rivera.
Yeah, for Rivera. I like the Font matchup. That's a good one. If they wanted to play it up where, to give Rivera, have him fight somebody above him, fighting up, Corey Sandhagen, I don't think would be a bad option either. Those 2 were under the same management group, and now Rivera, I believe, is with Malkikawa in first round management. So that might have been a fight that would have been on the table previously had they not been under the same guidance. So that's a fight that kind of jumps out at me. If they want Rivera to fight up and they want to, have Sandhagen fight a quote unquote rebound fight. But yeah, the Font matchup again, if he wants to fight somebody in the same vicinity, a little bit behind him, Rob's coming back. I guess he's on his comeback, so that's not a bad matchup either.
Yeah, so all right, I actually like those matchups too. So before that we had Talia Santos getting a unanimous decision over Molly McCann in a fight that she entered as a slight underdog, or fairly mild underdog, and absolutely trashed McCann. It wasn't that close. I saw some really good things and some really bad things. I'm gonna get to the bad things first when I look at Santos. She's still a little too flat-footed for my liking, and I'm worried based on that flat-footed, a powerful wrestler would be able to get takedowns with that. That said, the good that jumped out, this is a girl that I was like, this is a really close pick'em fight. I was on the fence, and I kind of like Molly McCann just based on she's like a grinder, toughness, which I believe goes a long way in women's MMA. Someone like Jessica I, reach all the way to a title fight just by being tougher than people. Santos, I mean, the way she used range was fantastic. The kicks to all areas of the body. Her clinch game was strong. She threw in some takedowns herself. Went for a couple submission shots. At the end of the fight, her ground and pound was right. Like, there's a lot to like for Santos. So my eyes opened a little bit. When I always talked about, Kattar and all these ones like being disappointed. Santos one that I'm like, whoa, I put a little check mark in my notes next to her. I feel a little better. How do you feel about this?
Well, I got to ask you, because I know you watch a lot more tape than I do. You kind of do the tape study and stuff. I mean, I felt that it was kind of night and day from her debut. I thought she looked surprisingly better. Like, it almost was like a different fighter. Like, you kind of in your head, you kind of understand the general, where everybody fits. And, if you had told me, okay, she's going to go out and beat Molly McCann, I would say, okay, I guess that's within the, a reasonable that's a reasonable thought. It's not, an 8-1 underdog or something, but I think just the way she did it and the confidence and the domination throughout pretty much the entire fight was something that really caught me off guard, considering that she's losing her debut to Mara Romero Barella, and just kind of, I don't want to say I couldn't believe it, but really great turnaround, nice rebound.
Yeah, I mean, I really just saw a raw product back then, and now she seems like someone who's kind of getting it. And that what happens a lot when you have these young fighters coming up with the contenders. I mean, you're taking people. There's a lot of people that I wasn't that high on the regional scene that and I'm not going to pretend to be one of these guys who watches all these people. There's a lot of people who do much more better than I do. But yeah, she wasn't someone that special. Now I'm feeling pretty good, and I think like Edmund Shabazian. Shabazian was the guy who came up the Contender Series, and like I didn't see anything on him. I was like, no, he's not gonna be that good. Like could win a couple fights, and then there was like. Hooper there was a guy that I was like, no, this guy's not even close to UFC ready, and that one I was right. So I'm right sometimes, I'm wrong sometimes. Santos is someone that I'm wrong. I mean, she's at that age where you make huge, improvements between each fight, and it's those people who continue to make those big, huge improvements. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see who she faces next when she gets back there. Really, really fantastic performance. You can kind of see, based on my excitement of her, that she's probably going to end up in a portion in the awards section later on in the show. And the last fight of the main card was the return of Razak Al Hassan versus UFC newcomer Munir Lazes. Sean Bitter, shout out to Sean Bitter. If you're not familiar with Sean Bitter, he's a writer for Cage Side Press.
Man.
He was telling a lot of people this is a pick'em fight. He did a lot of research on, and Sean Bitter is absolutely fantastic when it comes to, he might be the best when it comes to regional. I know Nolan loves the guy. Regional C coverage. He kept telling people, like, Lazes is a really good prospect. This is not an easy one. Al Hassan is not going to run through him, and that was for about first minute of the fight. Sean looked like an idiot. The last 14 minutes, Sean looked like a genius, which he is, by the way. Al Hassan came out like he does in all fights, just unbelievable athleticism, throwing heat, looking for the knockout, throwing everything but the kitchen sink, and I'm trying to get this guy's name. I could be saying it wrong. I wrote down Lazest. He just took it. He just ate him. And then from after that big flurry, I was just in awe of some of the things I saw this kid doing. His chin to be able to take shots from Al Hassan. I think about like Sabah Hamasi, a guy who's known for his this. Like he got knocked out dead by Hassan. Like Hassan has some legit power. His chin was incredible. Something I always talk about is his vision. Like he was seeing the shots when he was throwing himself. He was seeing. Like he was doing what I overquote him all the time. But what Israel Adesanya says, like he doesn't just like throw wild. He aims and fires. It's something Conor McGregor says. Like like you see it and he's seeing. Anderson Silva. Like I saw the vision. He was mixing up his attacks. Like every attack was something different. He was throwing teep kicks. He kept crushing to the body, which besides Al Hassan being tired, the body shots ain't helping him. Knees, he was timing when Al Hassan would come in, knees up the pipe, and then he would mix in some takedowns himself just to get him guessing. To me, what a performance. Clearly won Could argue he won all 3 rounds. Definitely won the last 2. Fun call out. He's not going to get Mike Perry, but fun call out of Mike Perry afterwards. This is the guy, like I just said about Santos, circling the name, check mark, stars. Am I overreacting to Hassan just gas himself out, or are you jumping on the bandwagon that Sean Bitter's driving?
No, I think I'm on Sean's. I'm sitting in the back seat there. I definitely think Lazzez had a really impressive performance, and something that stuck out to me in addition to everything you said was I felt he looked really confident in there, really comfortable for a guy that comes from a region that's not necessarily known for their MMA and the big shows and things like that. You just look very comfortable. And I think sometimes people get overconfidence confused with confidence. Like, sure, if you're overconfident and you're doing something outside of your comfort zone, yeah, that's stupid. Sometimes you get rocked. We've seen fighters get dropped. We've seen, a lot of stupid things in MMA. But when it comes to the confidence, Conor McGregor showed it more than anybody. It goes a long way to have a good cage presence in there. And for Razak to come out firing, land all those shots and have this guy still pushing him for, there's still 13 minutes left in the fight, and this guy's coming at him like full steam after eating his best shots. I give him extreme amount of props, and not to turn the conversation too much in a sideways direction here, but something that's really stuck out to me, and I think that this card as a whole kind of had this theme was. It seems like the signings that they're making for Fight Island are phenomenal. Just both in the guys' resumes and also what we've seen in the cage. And it almost makes me wonder if the UFC should look into trying to have this kind of model going forward. I think part of the reason we're getting these great signings is because we're in a region where they can't just grab a guy from the local promotion down the street and say, okay, who's your champ? Okay, he's 2-1 in his last 3. Let's bring him in. Their options are they can bring him from anywhere in the world right now. It makes probably the same amount of sense. So we're seeing a fight that's going to be on Saturday, Malcolm Gordon and Amir Albazi. Those are 2 of the best flyweights in the world, and I thought should have been in the UFC a while ago. And here they are. They get signed because of short notice opportunities. We saw it with Michailidis. I know he lost, but a very legitimate prospect again. So. And Lazzez, in his region, very legitimate prospect. So I think the UFC should learn something from this, in that maybe they should start going for the best guys available and not the one that, is kind of the easiest to get on short notice regionally, so to speak. That's just kind of my totally sideways rant about what's going on. But it's something that I've noticed, and I think not a lot of people have necessarily picked up on.
Yeah, no, it sounds like I mean, when they fight in Toledo and if someone gets canceled, they got to pull Toledo guy, Right. It sounds like a good idea. And I mean, guys making their debuts are impressing. And speaking of a guy making his debut, you just mentioned Conor McGregor. This is how I love to transition. The headlining fight of the prelims was a guy who trained, he spent a lot of time training in the same gym as Conor McGregor, and that was John Phillips. But he took on a guy that reminds me a lot of Conor McGregor's rival, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and that's Khamzat Chimaev. Chimaev absolutely ran through Phillips. The Twitter was going crazy. Everyone was calling him like the new Khabib. He just absolutely ragdoll. Took down Phillips, who, let's be honest, Phillips is not a high level UFC talent. He's never going to challenge for a title or even reach the top 15. And he's especially not known for his ground game. So he obviously Chimaev attacked his weakness, but boy did he attack at me. He took him down. I scored the first round 10-8. He got that Dagestani handcuff. I love that the broadcast, I don't know if it was this fight, but Paul Felder threw out the wrestling. It's called a one-on-one in wrestling, so shout out to Paul Felder for throwing in that. But the Dagestani handcuff, and just once he got him down, that round was over. He wasn't getting backed up. He got pummeled. And second round happened again, and then he ended up locking in a Darce choke in the second round. This was I think Phillips landed one punch, and it was like a little rabbit punch. I mean, this was like the perfect debut, like a shutout, a no-hitter, a perfect game, something like that.
We saw our 10-7.
What? We
saw our 10-7 round. One of the judges gave Chimaev a 10-7 in the first round. So I think that should go to show people just what kind of performance this had. And it was kind of interesting to talk to Farah Hanoun, my coworker, over at MMAJunkie. She's very she's very into the regional scene when it comes to the Middle East, and Brave CF, which is where Chimaev fought before this. And she was, she was talking about after the fight, she was saying everybody keeps comparing him to Khabib, but that's not usually the way he fights, is what she said. She said that he usually, kind of doesn't necessarily go for that ground and pound sort of attack. So it makes me wonder if he's really hyped. What is his strong suit? Was that not even the best? Is there more to show? We didn't see much of his stand-up.
Well, maybe he started off with that high kick. He threw the high kick, and then, he looked good. Really, really impressive. I mean, like you said, it's John Phillips. It's one of those ones, like, sometimes those guys you can look good against. But another fight, prelim fight that I was really looking forward to, I thought it lived up to it, Ricardo Ramos versus Lerone Murphy. Murphy won by first round TKO. This was like a battle of two halves in the first round. Ramos came out looking fantastic. I mean, he was light on his feet like he always is. But he was light on his feet. He was really mixing up his attacks, obviously throwing those spinning kicks. He kept doing this like weird, like behind his back calf kick thing, which was creative. Got some takedowns, took a back of Murphy, and then in the scramble, Murphy ended up getting on top, and he punished Ramos for making a mistake in incredible ground and pound. Like at one point, I actually, Michael Bisping screamed, "He's out!" and Twitter kind of like started joking and said, "Oh, new Joe Rogan with he's out." I actually thought he was out, and I think he woke up from I think he got knocked out, and the ground woke him back up. And Murphy just kept hitting him, so it kind of woke him back up. And then he did actually put him out.
There's no question in my mind he was hurt from that one, just with the way he reacted after that. And I think Murphy could kind of tell, too. He sensed it. He went for the kill and really kind of went all in on that from the standing position, diving in for ground and pound. So I think both, Ramos and Murphy exemplified behavior that indicated that maybe Michael Bisping wasn't totally off there.
Yeah, no, I think it was a flash knockout or pretty close. Murphy, I mean, this is a guy. He's 9-0-1 in his career. I'm trying to pull. I wanted to have his age up. I know he's fairly young. I tried pulling up his age, and I clicked on the wrong fighter. But he's undefeated. He's 9-0-1. He had a draw against Zabaryukov in his UFC debut, and then he had obviously this win. He's 28, as Nolan said. I mean, that is a tough two fights to start UFC debut. Your debut against Zabaryukov, your follow up is Ricardo Ramos. You gotta like this kid. I mean, he could be 2-0 in the UFC right now. I mean, he had a split draw against Tukov. How excited should we be about him?
Yeah, very. I think it's awesome. I think his region of the world, I think the UK is very excited about him. I think he's got a pretty solid personality. He's a good addition to a good weight class. But like you said, coming in and taking on, two tough guys off the bat. I mean, that fight against Tukagov, people haven't seen it. Very fun contest. One that I felt like they were kind of setting up Tukagov for a win in Abu Dhabi in front of everyone, and Murphy kind of spoiled the show there. And I mean, Ramos, what was his record in the UFC? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. It was 5-1 before this. That's another solid win. So, yeah, I'm excited for him. I think that in a short time he's already made a dent in a very stacked roster of 145 pounders.
Yeah, and if you remember, when this was a draw, the narrative about Tukagov was more of, well, he had this long layoff, based on the whole Conor brawl thing, and he was out for a very long time, and then it was either that or he's not that good to begin with, and then he goes on and he starched the guy there,
Kevin Aguilar,
former LFA champion. Aguilar hasn't been on the best run either, but still a good win. He starches him in the first round, and then it starts oh wow, Tukov is actually really good. So what does this say about Murphy? I think Murphy's a guy to watch out for. Speaking of guy to watch out for, two light heavyweights made their debut in the UFC. Two Europeans. First was, I'm going to try again, Modestas Bukauskas from Lithuania, and he beat the man from Greece, Andreas Mihailidis.
I thought that was both. I think you got. I would say Bukauskas, you got like a 9.3, and Michailidis, I would give you like a 8.5. So
right.
you're doing pretty good on both of them there.
Trying. Really weird ending to the fight, but this is a guy that has a lot of people are excited. A lot of the sharps, a lot of the hardcores were excited to see both these guys. I think it's always good. One, bringing in talent from the light heavyweight division. It's a very top heavy division. For a long time, the light heavyweight division was like the glory division of MMA. But right now, from a talent sense, it's a little shallow. But always bringing in Europeans is always good. The first round, there wasn't that many action. Bukauskas kind of was moving around a lot, trying to work behind a jab, trying to do that while Andreas was throwing some hard, heavy leg kicks. When he finally went in for takedown, Bukauskas was landing some really hard elbows. I watched the replay a bunch of times. One angle, they looked illegal to me. The one from basically from behind Andreas going in for the takedown, from that angle, which was like the live TV one, they looked illegal. But when they went from the other side, from the back end of Bukauskas, and it looked more like on the side. Mm-hmm. So when I put them all together, I was like, you know what? I actually think the backwards angle was a little better. I feel like that was right on the line, and I actually think they were legal shots. Do you agree with them or not?
Yeah, I was fine with them. I mean, it was kind of like when in doubt, you got to kind of go with what the referee sees.
Sure.
I don't think it was an egregious call by any means. I don't think anybody's going to challenge this and get it overturned. And I think they even said on the broadcast that the one of the cage side officials, or maybe it was Mark Ratner or something, said that the referee could look at the replay if he'd like to make sure that he got it right. And he said that there was no need to do that. So I honestly was fine with it. I think people were a little critical of Michailidis for like
being hurt.
I don't know. People are just critical about everything. It seemed like they were kind of calling him out for wanting out or something, but I think he was hurt. I mean, how many guys have we seen take those type of elbows and go down from it? So I'm sure and there was a big debate too about Bisping saying, no, it's because the cage door opened. I think it was a combination of things. Sure. There was a lot of weirdness going on at the same time. Yeah,
definitely. A little bit of perfect storm. So I kind of buried the lead on this. I didn't really mention what happened. What happened was Bukauskas won by, technically it's in there as first round retirement because Michailidis did not answer the bell between the first and second round. What happened is he was going for a takedown. The round ended with Bukauskas landing like 6, 7, 8 downward elbows right on that line between legal and illegal. The guy from Greece was clearly hurt. Didn't answer the bell. The referee called it off. There was this weird thing Nolan just mentioned about Michael Bisping talking about the door. I actually think Bisping might be on this. So basically, the Greek fighter was sitting on his butt while that happening. The attendants, the team, all the people open up the door, but his back is right. He's sitting right in front of the door, and he kind of leans back. And Bisping points out that he was going to lean back, like what he thinks is the defense is still going to be there. Instead, the door was open, and he kind of like falls off. When the referee sees that, he calls it off. I do agree that it looked like he was probably trying to lean against the fence for a second, but the guy wasn't objecting. Like he wasn't like, no, I'm okay. Like He was still staggered. It can be both. He was staggered, but I do believe he wanted to lean against the fence. My one thing that I think we're going to disagree on, you mentioned that you said Mark Ratner. I don't remember. I think they said a fellow referee told him like you can check the replay. I don't like the referee didn't check the replay because you've already called the fight off, so it's not changing to get it right.
Right.
Like don't. What I feel like if you're not, and I don't want to challenge this guy's character.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to do that, but don't be so stubborn because people can make mistakes. I mean, Nolan made a mistake. I mean, look at his mustache. People make mistakes.
You made a mistake by having me on here.
Yeah, there you go. So just get it right. Like the fight's already over, regardless. Either to win, you could go disqualification, you can go no contact, you whatever you want. But just get it right now. There's no rush. Right. That's why I didn't like that. Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, totally. I just, it's one of those things like all it's going to do is help give you more information to make the right call.
That's right.
It's not going to, I mean, yeah, I don't know why the referee wouldn't look at it. Just seems kind of dumb.
Yeah.
The
referee's name was Daniel Motherhead. Not a guy that I'm very familiar with. But, I mean, even if he called it was such on the line that I think he probably still would have stayed with the ruling. But it wasn't one of these ones that was egregious where it made him look bad if he decided to change it. If anything, I think when a referee changes his mind, it actually makes him look better. Like, you're human. Everyone can. I mean, there's always going to be idiots on Twitter who's going to talk shit, but pretend they're perfect. But anyways, moving on. We had Jared Gordon versus Chris Fishgold. Jared Gordon won a unanimous decision. Lot to talk about this fight. The first thing I want to talk about is Paul Felder was on the desk doing the commentary. After the fight right before this, he leaves the desk, runs backstage, changes into his, I think he had to change his Reebok gear, came out with Jared Gordon, cornered Jared Gordon. That happened because Jared Gordon, all three of his cornermen tested positive for COVID. While he was in Abu Dhabi, Jared Gordon himself tested positive. They found out they retested, it was a false positive. But all three of his cornermen could not fight. So he went with his teammate Paul Felder and I think Eric Nixick of Extreme Couture he doesn't train with. I think there's some friendship there. He cornered. I'm not sure who the third. I don't remember who the third guy was. But Jared Gordon had a lot of things going on heading into this fight. Some other things that happened that he talked about in the post-fight press conference was his wife had a miscarriage. So that I have 3 kids. I couldn't imagine going through that, getting the excitement of going to be a father and all that. And then his wife got COVID through this. He had to separate from his wife during a time where she should be grieving because he had a fight. Terrible things to happen, but it was nice to see him get a win. What do you think of this fight?
Yeah, I thought it was a much-needed win, both in for his stock. I think some people were writing him off. He had some brutal knockout losses there. People didn't really know where he was at. It was nice for him to get back in the win column. Obviously, like you said, battled a lot of adversity, which seems like a theme in his life. He's gone through a lot. And, it's nice to see him get back in the win column. And Chris Fishgold, I don't know where he goes from here. Ton of hype coming into the UFC. I was extremely high on him. He's lost 3 out of 4 now in the UFC. That might be the end of what we see from him. Maybe they'll give him one more. Seems like they're a little less eager to cut people right now during the virus just because they want to have so many roster options. But I'm guessing that was the end of his deal, being the 4th fight, and that might be the last that we see of Chris Fishgold, at least for now, in the UFC.
Yeah, I'm really torn. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm really torn on Chris Fishgold because he was a guy that came in with a lot of hype. He did get some tough matchups. I mean, he got matched up with Calvin Kattar. He got matched up with Makwan Americani. I think this was his worst loss. But there was a lot of factors. Like, to me, one, he missed weight. And then, it wasn't good. Like, he didn't bulk up. Like, it was fat.
Yeah.
He looked really slow to me, which was not kind of thing. He was kind of like the explosive guy. And to me, he looked slow. Jared Gordon should not be the more athletic guy in the cage, ever. He's kind of a guy who wins off of toughness and grit. And I didn't see that. Not a good night for the Englishman. Before that, speaking of foreigners, we had Luana Jojua from Georgia. She defeated Diana Belbica from Romania. This was a very short fight, very fun fight. Basically, Belbica was coming out, piecing up Jojua. They clinch. Belbica made the mistake of going for a takedown. As soon as they hit the mat, Jojua starts putting on a grappling clinic, just throwing on about 8 different variations of an armbar. All of them looked deep. Belbica showed extreme toughness, but eventually Jojua got the right angle and got a first-round submission win. Nothing much to take from this. It was striker versus grappler, and grappler got the best of it. What do you take on this?
I mean, I actually it was obviously a surprising decision, like you said, for Belbita to take it to the ground. I thought Joshua could have got a bonus pretty easily. I mean, pretty nice armbar transitions. I think that it was very visually appealing. It was very quick. It was impressive in my opinion. Thought it was probably, going into after the night ended, I was like, okay, that's going to probably be a bonus. But yeah, I'm interested to see her. She's obviously got to sharpen up her stand-up game a little bit more, and I would be interested in seeing Belbita back too. I think, for the little windows that we've seen of her, she seems to be a very offensive fighter. The McCann fight, I think she surprised a lot of people with her abilities early on. So maybe they'll cut her, maybe they won't. I wouldn't be opposed to giving her a third shot, but yeah, not so quick. We can't really talk about it much more than that.
Yeah. John Franklin's always say you can't talk about the fight longer than the actual fight itself. I couldn't imagine doing the recap if it was the Jose Aldo versus Conor McGregor fight. That would have been really weird. All right, we're only going to talk about the main event for 13 seconds. And the first fight of the night was we talk about a guy who has a lot of hype, and this guy has a cult following out in Europe, especially in Wales. Jack Shaw remains undefeated, moves to 13-0. He entered the fight as a -1,000 favorite when it closed. And if you don't know what that means you have to put up $1,000 to win 100. For every $1,000 you win 100. So you put 2,000, you win 200. All right. He defeated Aaron Phillips by second round submission, rear naked choke. Jack Shaw is a really, really fun prospect, a guy that I've been high on, done a lot of tape study on. I know Nolan's high on him. But this was a complete mismatch. So it's hard to really assess how much improvement Jack Shaw has made based on this. Phillips is actually in his second stint in the UFC. He had
one of the weirder returns. I don't know about you.
Yeah, he had one.
I'm not saying it wasn't warranted for him to get back, but definitely flew under, I think, pretty much every radar that he had racked up, 6 wins in a row.
Yeah, so when they said Aaron Phillips in his second stint, I was like, I didn't remember him. That's how bad it was. He was in 2014. He went 0-2, and I didn't remember him. So, Jack Shaw, yeah, I mean, this is what he needs to do, get some more cage time. So good for Jack Shaw. I got nothing else to say about this fight. You got anything?
No, excellent performance. Pretty dominant. Pretty, if you want to see what Jack Shaw's strengths are, watch that fight.
Yeah, he's a really good grappler. And when you're a -1,000 favorite, like this is what you're supposed to do. Like we talked about last week with Amanda Hebos when she went in such a big favorite against Paige Van Zandt. Like when you're that big a favorite, all the pressure's on you. Like because you can't just win, you have to dominate, get them out there. Like you can't go to 15, even if you 10-8 round them for 15 minutes, you can't go to a decision. Like you have to take him out to be impressive. So to be impressive when you're that big a favorite is and that's what you got to do. So there you guys have it. We have covered all the fights in the most comprehensive recap we believe on the internet. Real quick, we do the Bulls and the Bears. Nolan, and just to pull back the curtain a little bit, I didn't give him any prep time, so he probably won't have any Bulls and the Bears. So I will go first. I'll give him some time if he wants to think about anything. So if you're not familiar with the Bulls and the Bears is a stock market reference, and basically when the stock market, when a stock is going up, it's a bull market. That's because the bull charges with his horns up. And when the stock market is going down, it's a bear market. That's because the bear charges with his head down. I will do the Bulls first, and we kind of do it like hockey, like 3-star, 2-star. Your number 1 star is the best of the night. So my 3, you can only pick 3. You don't have to pick 3. My number 3 star or theme, I'm going to go with Jared Gordon, based on everything I said. Like not the best one being Chris Fishgold, but all the things that are going on in his personal life, miscarriage, COVID, no cornerman, Jared Gordon. My number 2, Paul Felder. He did his best. Sean, I almost said Sean O'Malley. Sean, the guy from PFL. What's the guy who's commentating and fighting? Sean O'Connell. I almost said Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Connell. Got to commentate, and he got to win as a cornerman. So that's a good night. But my number 1 winner, and I'm putting it as a whole group, and I'm saying young prospects, Jack Shaw, Bokaskis, Lizette, Shemaev, Santos. Like there was 5 or 6 young fighters who all came through, looked good. So those are my Bulls. I will do some Bears. My number 3 Bear, meaning not a good one, and that's Cody Stamann. I don't think he showed up at all, especially that narrative. You remember after his last fight is maybe he should stay at 145. This was another fight, 145. Sure, he fought a 135-pounder. Still, it just was not a good showing. He got beat every area. Number 2, Razak Al Hassan. Obviously, he had to deal with that. Is his first fight back from the sexual assault accusation. He was acquitted of that. I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting an opinion. The court of law acquitted him. So according to the court of law, he is not guilty. But comes back. He's a big favorite. Loses return. A long layoff. Not good night for him. But my number 1, not good night. And my main man, Nolan King, said it in the opening. And that is the East Coast. And not good to be on the East Coast with a midweek card that ends well after midnight. Not good to be, especially if you had to be in to work early the next morning. Nolan, do you have any Bulls or Bears? You can even pick some of mine.
Sure. So I would say number 3, if we're talking about the Bulls, I would go with Calvin Kattar for that. I think, like you said, it wasn't his best performance, but definitely solidified his name up there, got people talking. I saw more discussion about him. Matchmaking, what's next? Is he, he's a contender, blah, blah, blah. I saw more of that last night than I've ever seen before when it comes to him. In terms of my number 2, I would have to say Munir Lazez. I think people are excited about him. Has a whole region of the world on his back, a whole, kind of upbringing. And he talked about it in the media days, being one of the first Arab-raised fighters. He said there's been other fighters that are Arab, but they're not raised in an Arab country and don't consider themselves, basically, he's the most, he's in a different class of his own when it comes to that.
You're telling me. So to quote the notorious B.I.G., same number, same hood.
Exactly.
There you go. Because when you think of Laziz, you think of, was it?
It's all good.
Biggie Smalls. There you go. All right, good. Now you're number 1. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. Number 1, Khamzat Chimaev. I know he did not face the toughest tier opponent on the card, but at the same time, he got people talking, which is at the end of the day what it's all about. And he got $50,000, and Habib comparison is in full effect. Whether or not that pans out to be accurate is yet to be seen. Top 3 for the Bears. Number 3, I would have to say, man. I like your pick of, I got my 3 now. We're going to go Molly McCann at number 3. I think that some people viewed that as a little bit of a setup fight, and I don't think that was her best performance. Number 2, Chris Fishgold, which we talked about. And number 1, Dan Mohavedi's stand-ups in the fights.
Nice, good call.
Questionable at best. I'm all for standing things up when it takes a little too long, but I think that it was kickboxing-esque what was going on from him. Yeah,
and was he the one who also refereed the Stamann fight? Because at one point Stamann was behind
I believe so,
Rivera, and he broke him. He's like, dude, I'm behind. I got his back.
Yeah, he repped that one, and he repped Ziz's fight, I think.
Yeah, the Al Hassan fight.
There was weird, bizarre separations.
Yeah, good call. By the way, shout out to Lerone Murphy. Because if he didn't win, England would have went 0 for 3 of the night. So nice job, Lerone Murphy. Because they would have made my Bears if they went 0 for 3. Last one, guys, the cut list. The way this works, both me and Nolan have to agree on who we cut. We try not to be too negative with this when we cut someone that just is opening for more talent. I got 1 nomination, and it is a man from England, Chris Fishgold. He's 1-3 in the UFC now. He's missed weight. I am willing to cut Chris Fishgold. Nolan, do you agree or disagree? I think we lost Nolan.
With you, I think just like am I gone?
Nope, you're there. You're there. You froze for a second.
Okay, I agree with you. I think he's 28. He can still go back, get some more reps in, and come back rebuilt. I don't think he's a bad fighter by any means. You just got to kind of figure out what's going on.
And England has really, the Great Britain has really good regional promotions that he can go
for
to.
Sure. And came from Cage Warriors. I'm sure he could go back, get a couple title fights. And
it's not like any star ever came out of Cage Warriors, though. Right?
Yeah. I actually have a second nomination, too.
Oh, all right. Here we go.
John Phillips.
Oh, he's so much
fun,
though. He got that. You know what?
1-4 in the UFC.
His last fight before this, he got a 14-second knockout.
He did. I mean, he always brings it. He's exciting.
Yeah. I'm going to save John Phillips.
Okay.
All right. So
run it back with Chimaev.
All right. Even though Fishgold is a much better talent than Phillips, I'm saving John Phillips. One more shot from Mr. Phillips. No, what was your overall grade of the card?
I'd give it a C+. I'm kind of being a little critical, but I think it was a little above average. Certainly not the worst card. Certainly not the best card we've seen, but entertaining nonetheless. And
I'm gonna hold up my grade, see if Nolan can see what I wrote down beforehand. I also wrote down a C+.
Seems a little suspicious here.
Yeah, I also wrote down a C+. Yeah, nothing spectacular. Before I let you go, Nolan, we have another fight this Saturday. There's a lot of big fights. I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire. Who is the flyweight champion of the world come Sunday morning?
Flyweight champion of the world come Sunday morning is Davison Figueiredo. I think there's nothing really in that first. I mean, Benavidez is Benavidez, but I mean, granted, it could be nobody.
Yeah, I was gonna see. I was gonna see if you took the third option that he misses weight again. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe he makes weight, and somehow Joseph Benavidez, first time in his career, he misses weight. Imagine that happened.
Benavidez beats him. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that. I think it'd be nice to see Benavidez finally get the UFC title, but his back is definitely against the world. Nolan, tell other people where they can find you.
On Twitter, at MMA_Kings. You can find me on Instagram, at Nolan King MMA, and MMAJunkie.com. I'll be doing some stuff coming up for them in the next week or so, some exciting things, and stay tuned.
All right, fellas, that is the Shillan and Duffy show minus Mr. Duffy, where they had the great Nolan King. We'll be back this week as we're recapping Fight Island number 2. Flyweight title is on the line. I am, of course, Keith Shillan. You can follow me on Twitter at Keith Shillan. My last name is spelled Shillan. So it's at Keith Shillan with the letters MMA at the end. And guys,
see
you guys next time.